If you've ever wondered how an F1 team plans a race, or you think overcuts and undercuts are types of hairdo, you've come to the right place. Here's our insider's guide to F1 strategy. So, why does an F1 team need a strategy? First off, every driver must pit at least once in a dry race. It's in the rulebook. F1 tyres are not designed to last a full distance, and the laws state that each car has to use 2 different types of tyre during the race. Each tyre type performs differently. The softer the tyre, the more grip, but the quicker they wear down. That's known as degradation, or deg, and it's a crucial part of the F1 strategy. Teams must choose when to pit and how many times to do so, and it's this variation that spices things up and stops cars running in a train. When did F1 teams start playing the strategy game? One of the first times a pit stop strategy was tried out in F1 was in 1957, when legend Juan Manuel Fangio ran with less fuel to begin with, aiming to be lighter than the rest of the grid, and then pitted for fuel later. But it didn't work, so nobody tried it again for 25 years. Then, in 1982, the Brabham team discovered that fueling light and stopping to top up and fit fresh rubber mid-race gave them an advantage. It caught on, and everyone did it, but the risks of refueling fires saw it banned just 2 years later. In 1994, with safety measures much improved, it was brought back to try to make things more exciting. And sure enough, refueling strategies mixed things up, but things still went wrong sometimes, like when Max Verstappen's dad, Jos, was engulfed in flames. Luckily, he escaped with only minor burns. Refueling was banned again in 2010, but to keep the strategy element alive, the 2-tyre rule was brought in the following year. What influences a team's strategy? Huge amounts of research and data analysis go into deciding a race strategy, both before the event and during the weekend. Around 6 weeks before the race, strategists gather data on historic variables like the time it takes to come in and out of the pit lane, the average expected pit stop time, and the chances of a safety car and its potential effects. As the race gets closer, they also do computer simulations to predict the pace and deg of their car and their rivals. They then use all this data to develop a baseline strategy, all before the race weekend has even begun. At the circuit, the strategy team collects live data on tyre performance during the practice sessions. They work out the deg for each tyre type, again for their cars and their rivals, and plug that back in to refine their simulations. Tyre wear is not only affected by tyre type and tyre temperature, but also by car weight. As a race progresses, fuel is burned off and the car becomes lighter, reducing the impact of wear on the tyres, and all of this must be factored into a team's strategy. After qualifying, the grid positions of all drivers and the accurate predictions of temperatures, humidity, wind speed, and wind direction are all plugged in to define the optimum plan. Before we talk about how teams decide their strategy, we want to give a shout out to our sponsor for this series, Party Poker, who currently have a special sign-up offer. If you head over to the link in the description, open a new account and deposit £10 or more today, Party Poker will match it on deposits up to £400 and give you £40 worth of free play too. Only available if you are 18 or over, T's and C's apply, and please be gamble aware and play responsibly. So, how do teams decide what strategy to use? The teams plug this data into complex computer programs, and after adjusting the variables, they calculate the shortest race time in a best-case scenario. This includes the effect of traffic, aka when a driver gets delayed behind other cars, and in the end it spits out how many pit stops to make, what laps to pit on, and what pace the driver should target at each stage of the race to maximise speed but also keep life in their tyres. According to the computer, this strategy will give the driver the best chance of avoiding holdups and getting back out ahead of the pack. If they have a strategy, why does it change? Well, the planned strategy is just the starting point. The simulation gives a plan A strategy as well as a plan B alternative if things don't go as expected, plus many more options depending on different scenarios that could play out. As soon as the race begins, the strategists on pit wall, in the garage, and even back at base constantly check the pace and position of the other cars. They run live simulations non-stop, trying to predict how the strategy options are changing. Based on these, teams might do any number of things, such as gamble on weather, react to a safety car when pitting loses less time, or try to second-guess their rivals, which is where undercuts and overcuts come in. What are undercuts and overcuts, and how do they work? As soon as a rival pits, a team has a decision to make, whether to follow their original plan or alter strategy and react. If a driver gets stuck behind a rival, the undercut could be worth a shot. In this scenario, the driver pits earlier than his rival, uses his new tyres to set a few faster laps, and hopes that when his rival eventually pits, he will come back out behind him. On the other hand, if a rival pits first, an overcut could be the way to go. In this scenario, if the tyres are still good, the driver stays out and pushes hard. But before his pace drops off, he pits for fresh rubber, hoping that when he pits, he has built an advantage and comes out ahead. Despite all this insight and knowledge, things can still go wrong. If a driver clips a curb, if a mechanic fumbles a wheel nut, or if some drops of rain come down at the wrong time. The race can be turned on its head in an instant. But don't think the team hasn't planned for that. As soon as anything changes, the computers will be whirring with new scenarios, working out how to change strategy as soon as possible. And that's how the best strategists get the best out of every